We're here at NHIOP TV, joined by Mark Halperin, who's editor-at-large and writes the page for Time Magazine and Time.com. Mark, thanks for joining us.
Great to be here.
Okay, the first 100 days so far. What do we know so far?
Well, this is not the presidency Barack Obama expected. He did not look ahead, as far-thinking as he is, and see that his life would be dominated publicly by dealing with the economic crisis. Every day brings a new set of decisions, some that are made in public view, some that are being discussed behind the scenes. And I think you'd have to give the president and his team pretty high marks. They're dealing with an unprecedented crisis situation in a time that is still extremely partisan. And I think they're on balance, I'd say they have more positive days than negative days. The problems they're dealing with are immense, and the ability to experiment the way Roosevelt did are limited by the age in which we live.
Why do you say they're limited by the age in which we live?
If you imagine, as I often do, what previous presidents would have done, Lincoln during the Civil War, Roosevelt during the New Deal, or Nixon during Watergate, imagine an internet and cable news culture. How different their ability to make decisions would be, how easily it would be, relatively easy it would be for the opposition to mobilize an electorate. History would be much different. And I think everything that Roosevelt did was second-guessed in the old media, in a slower way, in a less vitriolic way for the most part. When President Obama makes any decision, even if he makes a decision such as on a banking proposal he came forward with, that's kind of right down the middle, not too left and not too right, he is still subject on the internet and on cable TV and in the minds of the chattering class and members of Congress to second guessing from the left, from the right, in a way that I think really inhibits the kind of experimenting, at least cost-free experimenting, that past presidents had had.
So would you say actually that the media is affecting policy at this point?
I think that the echo chamber, of which the media is a big part, is definitely affecting, if not policy, at least the public's perception of what's going on, and it's part of the challenge for the president and his advisors to figure out a way to try to have the media convey their ideas, convey their agenda, rather than being caught up in a swirl, again, of that partisanship and negativity, what I call the freak show, that tends to overwhelm reasonable policy discussions.
Right, you described the freak show so well in the book about the 2008 election, The Way to Win, and, the 2008 came out in 2008.
Right.
A question for you about the Republicans' response so far to Obama. They've been fairly unified against Obama. Is that by choice, or are they simply doing what they have to do?
I think the Republican Party is extraordinarily weak now. I think they lack a clear public agenda on most of the major issues of the day that contrast with Barack Obama. I think they lack leaders who can capture the public imagination and explain that agenda. And I think they lack the infrastructure and financial resource advantages that they had for years in terms of fundraising and interest group activity. They are a weak party, and I think the reason they are sticking together is mostly because they are weak. They have nothing else except unity right now. And I think that's bad in some sense for the country. I think it's bad in long term for the Republican Party. The major problems facing the country today can only be solved through some sort of bipartisanship and unity. Iraq, the economic crisis, all dimensions of it, Social Security. You saw the stimulus bill pass without unity, without real bipartisanship, 3 Republicans in all of Congress voting for it. And I think Republicans sticking together is more their fault than the president's fault. Not entirely their fault, more their fault, and more harmful to them in the long term than it is to Obama. In the short term, I think it's very harmful to the president's agenda.
It seems Rahm Emanuel felt that way when he said that they tried to be bipartisan, but maybe tried too hard and had to focus on passing the bill. Maybe they lost Judd Gregg as Commerce Secretary in the process, but are they now being more partisan because of the response of the Republicans?
Something else I wrote about in my book, 2 kinds of politics, what I call Bush politics and Clinton politics, named after the 2 presidents. They're not perfect models. Sometimes Clinton practiced Bush politics and vice versa. But Clinton politics says you can find compromise in the middle. You can find a way to come up with a legislative solution which gets Republicans in the center, Democrats in the center, lose votes on the 2 extremes. Much harder to do. Bill Clinton did it on NAFTA, for instance. Very hard, and particularly in a partisan age, to have a joint whip operation to get enough votes from both sides so people join hands and jump off a bridge together. That's harder to do. Bush politics says, as long as you can get a majority, ram it through on a majority vote. Don't worry about what the other side wants. Get more of what you want. Don't compromise. That is politics that doesn't unite the country, I don't think. It's not the kind of politics I thought Barack Obama would practice. I think Rahm Emanuel and others in the administration who are talking about this now in warm tones are making a necessity out of the situation they're in. I think they're surprised that they weren't able to pick off Republicans. They didn't go the extra mile. They didn't go to the Democratic leadership and say, in effect, look at the most liberal members of the Democratic Party in Congress. If they vote for the stimulus package, by definition, that's going to be a bad thing. The liberals in the Democratic Congress are to the left of the country. The president should be looking, I think, to pass bills that are in the center of the country, not the center of the Democratic caucus. Because he couldn't find enough Republican votes to make that deal, he went for a Bush politics solution on the stimulus bill. Now they're celebrating that as all we have to do is try for bipartisanship. If we can't get it, we go with a partisan solution. I don't think that will work on universal health care, solving Iraq, and most of these big economic issues.
Mark Halperin, thank you very much for
Thank
joining
you.
us.